You are now listening to Asking for a Friend with TalkDoc, sharing insights through real, honest, and practical ways to improve your communication and relationships. Featuring your hosts, Dr. Pamela Kreiser, Meredith Edwards-Nagel, and Taylor Polindo.
For this episode, we're going to dive into the world of nonverbal communication. And the area that we chose to talk about is haptics, which is touch. When we think about verbal and nonverbal, we think about verbal being with the words and nonverbal being not with the words. There's a lot of debate over what percentage of meaning is carried in the interaction. Some say nonverbal communication comprises of 93%. Some say 90, some say 80. The message is really reliant on nonverbal, according to most experts. We can agree that it is a very important part of communication. We thought it would be fun to do some episodes about nonverbal communication because it's important to understanding the meaning. So let's think about nonverbal communication, the communication that is outside of those words that are spoken. One of the things that I think is so interesting about children and their development is if you think about the importance of nonverbal communication, it is actually what infants learn first. The distance from a mother's arm or father's arm is about 8 to 10 inches or so. And when you look down at the baby, you have the exact amount of distance that the baby can see when they are first born.
So wild.
Which is interesting that they can't focus on long distance. That has always been intriguing to me because children are already wired to start learning the nonverbal. We know that infants, even weeks old, can track their mothers and fathers' images and facial expressions, and in a matter of months, we'll be able to mimic the behaviors or the facial expressions. Now, the other thing that I find interesting is that children speak their first words around 12 to 15 months on average. That doesn't mean if your child spoke a different time, that was a problem. I'm just saying that's the average, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people have said to me, isn't that interesting that they don't learn to communicate? And I find that's not true based on what we've seen in development. We know that they can track the facial expressions of the parents very quickly in a matter of weeks. And we know that they are basically studying nonverbal communication. We see them frown. We see them respond to our frowns. And surprise, or whatever our facial expression is, the babies are right. They're studying the right thing. Yeah, from right when I'm born, I can just learn, I'll figure out the words later. Let me get this nonverbal thing down.
That is interesting.
And I've always found that to be true with my own children, watching them and their development. And they learn some fun things like how to really say no and mean it. I think you had a little taste of that recently, Meredith.
Oh, yeah. Got a lot of that.
Got a lot of
out.
no?
That's the big one right now.
Yeah,
Okay. Get out. Do it myself. Anyway, so nonverbals, and we're getting at specifically this one is touch today.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting. So we're starting with basically the jump of our lives is to study this from the go. And so it's neat that as we get older, we think, why does this matter? And that you've even said there's so much research that puts so much weight, at least what it sounds like, on our nonverbals, which is really fascinating to me. If you've ever had disagreements with people that think they don't matter, check out this series because they do.
They do matter. So the other thing I think that's interesting to pass on to you raising these little people, you're the educators of their touch education.
Terrifying.
Why is it terrifying?
Oh, there's so many things you don't want to fuck up, and this is a big one.
Yeah.
Taylor?
Yes.
Yeah, are we doing to jump into that? Just like touch and doing that? That's something I've thought about recently. The thing that sticks out the most, especially with young kids, is trying to learn what touch is okay for them, what's allowed. Even the simplest example is just like a family member or one of my friends or an adult that insists on getting a hug from a kid, and the kid is showing body language that says no or using words that says no. And so constantly having these conversations with other adults in my life, not because I think they come from a bad place in their heart, but to show my daughter, hey, if you don't want somebody to touch you, that's okay.
I think you could differentiate that too, where you have when the child is a newborn or early infant, the touch is very seamless in that you're doing a lot of it. They need it to regulate their behaviors, their emotions, to stop crying, to breathe better, right? There's a lot of research on all those things.
Yeah, there's so much positive to that. That's the only way you know to communicate at first. I never even felt that until I had a kid, but just there's no other way to talk to you than how I'm touching you.
Yeah. You have pain, I pick you up and hold you.
That is remarkable, the power of it. Most of the research I've seen, I started doing it when I was going to have a kid. You've heard, don't hold your baby too much because you'll spoil them, or all these things around if you hold them too much, or you should be holding them all the time. And what I've found to be true, and the research actually supports it, is that the more you touch your kids, the healthier they are. It supports brain development. It helps their hormone levels and the parent as well, because you can't touch someone and not be being touched at the same time. So both of you are benefactors at the same time. The research says that your child will actually be more independent and more secure with more touch. You want a stronger attachment between parent-child. And the more you have that, they'll actually be more independent. And I just looking at my oldest, I can tell you it's so true. I don't know if that's just my anecdotal evidence of one, but it's definitely not made this very clingy child. I will tell you that.
Oh, yeah. That's funny. Why talk about touch? What's so important about it with kids, in professional settings, cultural aspects of life? Why bother with touch as an important part of nonverbal?
I think some of the reasons that Taylor said, obviously, which is some of the health benefits that we get. I think it's essential, and knowing it's essential, and that we have different cultural beliefs about it, different expectations. Of course, there's times when we have unwanted touch as well.
Expectations. Should we dive into expectations on this one?
Sure.
And
I can go full nerd on you.
I love when you go full nerd on me.
This is my most remembered theory from our first class with you.
Oh, nice.
Is it really?
This is my favorite theory, yeah.
Hey, let's jump in.
So when we first met, it was in a communication theory class. And one of the theories was famous researcher Judee Burgoon developed this EVT, or expectancy violations theory, to help explain and predict violations in the expectations that we have regarding something nonverbal. But she wanted to not just explain when you and I read that as negative, she wanted to also explain when you and I read it as positive, as a positive violation. One of the tenets of the theory is this idea of the communicator reward valence. And so there's the violation that we might read a certain way, and then combine that with the communicator reward valence, which is essentially the positive and or negative. So valence, remember, plus sign, minus sign. It's the positive or negative consequence of that person being the violator. So we could talk about a couple different examples. So let's say you're on a date, someone who you are attracted to, and you haven't touched each other much before. This dating partner slips their hand around your waist. It might be a violation, meaning you weren't expecting that behavior, but you might, if you think positively of the person, see it as a positive expectancy violation. Because that might take you into a new aspect of your relationship that is now romantic. And so that, I think, is easy to understand. But what had happened previously, I think theory-wise, is we spent a lot more time talking about what happens when the violation's bad. Her idea was, let's talk about it when it's a violation. So it's different than what I expected to happen. I did not expect you to put your hand around my waist, but I actually don't hate it.
I actually don't hate it. That's
right. Okay, so that's
like
a positive. But let's talk about a different situation. So now you're in the workplace, and your boss, who you have a platonic relationship with, slips his hand around your waist. It's obviously a violation. You were not expecting that. And it's negative, and that's not a rewarding thing for you. But let's think about this thing that is important to the theory. And that is, you and I are going to calculate what happens regarding that communicator reward valence. So this on some level explains why sometimes people will not report sexual violations or violations of touch like that, because they're afraid the boss will punish you if you report it. And what we would say theoretically is it's because of the communicator reward valence being a minus sign. That minus sign means I might get some bad results from this if I say something. Now, I'm not trying to say not to say something.
Yeah,
I am not trying to advocate that, but I am trying to help explain. The theories are there to explain and predict behavior. And I think that does explain why some people might make the calculation mathematically and say, this is going to really cost me if I say something. And I don't think that's good. I think that's a terrible situation to be in, but does explain why that choice might be made. So we build these expectations based on the context, based on what we would predict to happen. When we're in the workplace, we have predictions about what's normal workplace behavior, or if we're on a date, what's dating behavior, right? We have expectations around that. This is how those expectations are built based on the relationship we have with the other person and the culture. What might be cultural in one place might not be the same practice in another culture. And so that's going to be another layer to it. You can think of expectancy violations theory as we get the calculation by combining the violation with the communicator reward valence. When we're talking about the children, they have expectations too. It's not like the theory only applies to adults.
I remember research said when you stimulate the pressure receptors in the skin, you lower stress hormones. So it makes sense like why we do this. Warm touch stimulates and releases the cuddle hormone or oxytocin, which enhances a sense of trust and attachment. So
love this.
Very important that we touch people. Trying to learn the parameters around it is very challenging because there is no set rules, right? I was wondering if that's why we feel comfortable with hairdressers, because they're always touching us and we feel comfortable to tell them everything. They say they're your therapist.
Oh, mine's the best. She listens to the podcast.
Shout out. Nice.
Shout out. We have a joke because whenever she does my hair and I go to have it washed, I always say, I'm here at the spa. You can rub my head as long as you want. She always laughs. This is the part that everyone likes, the head massage.
I just had this conversation with my husband. He'll wash his hair before he gets a haircut and drive as fast as he can so his hair's still wet. What are you doing?
The best part is there.
Yeah. I don't know why he does this. Anyway.
That's funny.
I really like what we were talking about, Taylor. Just you were saying about it reduces stress. Wasn't there something about how it also improves sleep quality too?
Definitely for children and all the research around touching children, and there's just so much around it. But I was looking at some of the research. So they're saying in the workplace, that's a very hard place to navigate touching. The only rule to ensure communicating by touch won't get you into trouble is to not do it. That's the only way to ensure it. But you give up a part of your humanity when you do that. So there's like a cost if we don't do that, because they were saying that research shows that if you ask people how they're comforted in a situation, they tend to only list physical touch.
Interesting.
So it was like pats, hugs, different kinds of, there's an element to even in the moments of grief and fear, but also in your like very excited, ecstatic, happy moments of joy and love, they want to be shared with touch as a way to fully express.
Yes. Which one of you put that scientist map of the parts of the body where touching is okay?
Oh, me.
Dr. K.
That was so interesting.
Yeah.
Just like it was front and back of the body, these images, lights up from yellow, which is acceptable areas of touch, all the way to black, which is do not touch.
We'll put it in the show notes. It's a diagram that started going around based on a bunch of research that was republished multiple times. I'll just put a link in the show notes. It shows by relationship type what's allowed. Mom's got a lot that she's allowed to do with the child, but you have stranger basically can touch, shake their hand and only briefly.
Yeah. The mostly safe areas, it seemed like shoulder, arm, hand was your safest zone.
Yeah. And I read a study. They talked about when you shake someone's hand, if you hold it too long, you've created a violation. So because they call it like an extended hug of the hands.
Stop it.
No, it's supposed to be just a handshake, but you held it. So now you've changed what it is.
The extended hug of the hands.
But people really judge you based on your handshake.
They do.
Oh, yeah.
Are you a limp? Are you like a fish? The fish handshaker?
No way.
Can't imagine either of you are.
No way. That's the worst.
Worst.
My brother had a college roommate like that. And I remember because I was in high school meeting him and I thought it was the weirdest thing. I could never forget it. That go to shake a hand. Anyway, that diagram was interesting. I feel like it connected to what you were talking about, Taylor.
I thought it was really interesting, the research on the NBA touch.
Oh, the
And
games?
Yeah. The study revealed that more on-court touching that was early on in the season predicted the more successful they would be later on in the season, because they were saying it's a whole language that you don't have the time to maybe say an encouraging word, and that's why they miss a free throw and then bump hands or whatever. You can encourage someone so much just with touch that you don't have the opportunity to with words. And it's very significant in sports, in a lot of sports. And then also, I think, in all of us, just doing the day-to-day.
So is that the betting model then? So I could just be watching tape of the NBA early games and scoring how many times they touch each other, and then that'll be my algorithm for picking who wins.
Oh my God, I love it.
That's a really interesting.
Go Cavs.
Those quantitative methods, right? Of course,
right?
I'm thinking the statistical answer there. But I was thinking when you were saying that, Taylor, think about volleyball. Every time they do any point, they are back in that circle. You were talking about the power of it, but if it carries more of the message percentage-wise, then obviously it would be smart to do that.
Yeah. Huge benefits to it. And then we believe it more. The research says that we believe the nonverbal more than the words. If they don't match and all of that, then it's hugely significant. It's very important that we know how to do this. And that's what's hard about it, is because there is no written manual on it's okay to touch this person in this moment right here. And they were saying that touchy people, we all have those in our lives. They're risking a lot. But again, it also creates that feeling of trust and empathy and just warmth towards people. I know the touchy person in my life, I have very positive thoughts of them because of their touchiness. But they can get away with it in a way that not everyone can.
That's true. Now, I'm rethinking my tennis days right now because I had a tennis partner for many years who every time we were doing a strategy talk back at the baseline, she would put her hand on my forearm and say, hey, we've got to do this or that. And I always thought, stop touching me. I don't like that. You can just tell me the plan. You do not need to touch my arm every damn time. And now you're saying, based on the research, that's what caused us to win.
Trust in her, and it was like she was, comforting her, doing all these things.
I thought it was me that contributed to the winning. It was her. It was her.
Okay, how touch is affecting your day-to-day life. Most recent studies have found that seemingly insignificant touches yield bigger tips for waitresses. People shop and buy more if they're touched by a store greeter, and that strangers are more likely to help someone if the request is accompanied by a touch. There was some study about when you received your change and they touched you. They interviewed people afterwards and asked them the response of the person who they had their exchange with. And those who were touched, it was much higher satisfactory reporting.
I'm really curious if this research has changed since COVID.
I wonder about that too, because I try not to touch people now.
I don't think I thought about it that much until that world experience. And now, I feel like in public, I try to make a conscious effort to not bump into people. So I wonder if there's difference in that research in that time period, especially.
But maybe that's why all the mental health went down. All these other terrible things happened.
But maybe that's the cost.
Yeah. We could circle back to expectancy violation theory, though. So during COVID, I expected you to keep your grocery cart away from me and not run into me or touch me or even come in the proximity of touching me.
Yeah.
If somebody touched you during COVID, you'd be like, oh my gosh, that's not allowed. And the tendency to go negative on the violation would be definitely there.
It was much higher that time.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah.
Interesting. It's weird how that time just affected so much.
Did either of your grocery stores have arrows of which way you were allowed to go down the aisle?
I did see them.
I had them in my regular grocery store. And that formed such an expectation about how you were going to behave. You had to go with that arrow. And if you went the other way because you were just going to grab that peanut butter or back up your cart, that was seen as, oh my gosh, you got to go around. And
you know what I love, though? In this other country I was visiting not that long ago, they had stickers still in the airports, but they're faded and no one's obeying them anymore. People are moving on.
Yeah.
Do we want to touch on intimate relationships?
Sure. The thing I was thinking, Taylor, was that research where they said it wasn't so much how much touch you had, it was how the touch was responded to.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So it wasn't the touching, it was the reaction to the touch that was associated with connection and more intimacy, which I think makes sense.
Yeah.
Because if you cringe, then obviously that's going to affect the intimacy or connection, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Or if you respond back with more touch, then that's going to have the opposite effect.
Yeah. Wow. The effect of that on each person. You lean in for a hug, they flinch. What does that do for that makes you want to touch less? What if what they're saying with their body isn't what's going on? That's a whole nother dive, but that's interesting. I'm sure there's so much of that. And back to what you said earlier, Taylor, right? People believe the nonverbal more. So even if, let's say, my husband goes to hug me and I wince, and then I'm like, oh, no, it's not you. It's just, and I say that with my words, but I move away physically from him trying to give me affection. He'll probably believe more what I showed him than.
I think would.
Yeah, definitely.
So we would say that when you say something verbally, but your nonverbal, whatever it is, in this case, touch, is inconsistent with the verbal message, we call it incongruent. When faced with that perceptual question, people who are the receivers of that message will choose the nonverbal to be the actual truth.
Don't they recommend when you're having difficult conversations? I know I practice this with my kids when I want to have a serious conversation. I'll ask for them to sit facing me. I want to hold his hands. I want to have his eye contact for the harder conversations. So there's the reassurance of my physical touch with him.
I don't know if that's incongruent. I think it could be congruent if you're being empathetic and honest and authentic. The touch would be congruent with that, meaning they match up.
But I guess the way I was thinking it might be incongruent for a kid is because they might be perceiving that you're mad at them if it's a serious talk of behavior or something like that. So you want to ensure that your message is congruent, that yes, I love and have affection for you. And just to make sure that those two align, you want to have the physical combined with even your difficult conversation of you're in trouble or whatever.
As long as that expectation, that violation is positive, this is a hard conversation. I'm not expecting you to be touching me at the moment, and I welcome that because I a little bit wince at that. If I'm going to have a hard conversation with my partner, I don't really want to touch them that moment. I want to sit with them and look at them and be maybe physically near them. But it's almost like why, I don't know if anyone else out there can have great road trip conversations.
Yeah.
Because somebody's because you can get into it in a great way, kind of glance at each other a little bit, but you're close and you're next to each other, and then sometimes you can lean over and touch a hand or whatever. But I would maybe be a little opposite of that.
But that actually is covered by the theory because it's your judgment of the violation, and then you're deciding whether that's a good or a bad thing based on who this person is.
Totally.
So Taylor, you have to pull it off. If you can't pull it off, then the kid gets a mixed message.
And I have to check myself because I'm like, if I'm really mad that I don't want to sit here and tenderly hold your arms, it does help me realign and say, I have to be calm now because I'm cradling a hand and my words will start to match that. I start to mimic then. And I have found that, Meredith, I totally relate with you. And I'm pissed. Don't fucking touch me. But when I sit and hold my partner's hand, our conversation is different. Do you know what I mean? So I get what you're saying and I agree with you. But I have found that the really hard moments have a more beneficial outcome at the end when I combine touch in those harder conversations.
I like the congruency you're talking about. That means that your words are softer or more gentle, which would match the touch, especially for us women to consider that to have those things match up gives us more power in our speech and we're more taken seriously. And I think we're not taken seriously, or we create voicelessness in some ways by saying one thing, but non-verbally doing an opposite thing. And that makes us appear to be less powerful or less reliable because of that inconsistency.
Right. Interesting. It's a good way of looking at that. If you want what you have to say matter, think about your nonverbal presentation in the moment.
And matching it up because it's going to have more power.
I was thinking this podcast we did before about studying the people you love. If you have partners or people you have intimate or close relationships, you have to be able to study them well to know, are you leaning into this touch well? Maybe my one kid is good with me holding her hand as I have this conversation. Then the next one is uncomfortable and needs just some space and some time. It's part of learning those people.
And learning their preferences and also what works, I think.
Yeah.
Because if the goal is to get the child to be soothed or to get regulated emotionally, then you would watch what is the reaction of the touch. Is this helping this kid get to this place? And I think we could also say that we've seen people in grieving situations. And I know some want to be touched and some don't, has been my experience. And that's just something we need to monitor.
That's the tough thing, right? You think you can tell, but then later stories come out and you're like, I thought they enjoyed that touch. And no, I did not enjoy that at all. That's a hard one to navigate.
This is such a beast of a topic. And I feel like we can get into so many different avenues. Then how do you learn how to say when you want the touch or not want the touch? And then how do you teach somebody to notice body language like that?
Yeah, you can talk. And I think with your closest people in your life, you're going to check in and talk to them. The other day, I was with somebody and we were walking through the courthouse because we were doing mediations. And I noticed somebody who was reaching out to shake hands, but getting fist bumps instead. But you know how sometimes there's a mismatch and then there's we'll shake our hands. No, I changed to the fist. You changed to the hand. Oh, we're still not matched up. Okay. So they landed on a fist bump. And then the next time this person saw another person at the courthouse, they put out the fist bump instead of the hand and they got the hand. I was laughing. We're having all this mismatch on what the expectation is of that handshake touch.
Wow.
But it was funny to watch because he was adapting only to have the next person not adapt the other way. And I thought, you can't win.
It's constant learning.
For sure.
It's hard.
What else can we say about touch?
The context matters so much because if you're being touched in a doctor's office versus a nightclub, that context is huge. And the touch, how you respond or what you think about that touch is significantly different based on your context.
There's two contexts that are pretty different.
Yeah.
Doctor's office. So maybe never go from a doctor's office to a nightclub. It's too big of a transition.
Never go from the doctor's office to the nightclub. Thank you.
There it is. Okay, so I want to finish with a story. When we were raising the kids, at one point, one of our sons started coming into our bed all the time. It wasn't related to like being sick or thunder and lightning. There's all those times when you have kids that come into your bed to get reassurance. One kid kept coming in. My husband's a famous kicker-outer. He was always kicking the kids out of the bed. But I had said to him, it's really unusual that we're having this child come in suddenly every night. And we're eventually kicking him out. But what's going on there? So my husband and I had a conversation about it. And we brainstormed and said, I wonder if he's just not getting touched enough. And so we decided to do an experiment on our child. I know.
I think you might have told us this before.
I think you do know the story.
I love this. Yes.
So we decided to do an experiment on our own child. My husband, after he got home from work, he would wrestle this child. And they would do their wrestling and they would play around physically and have touch in that wrestling. It wasn't like this hardcore wrestling. It was just a lot of fun gamesmanship. And we found, starting that first night, didn't come back in.
Oh, wow. I love that story.
And they did end up wrestling for a lot of years, not necessarily every night, but we noticed a pretty dramatic relationship. If there were times where that didn't happen, back in the bed.
So wild.
So
it like regulated him throughout the day. He needed that to calm himself or to rest better.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yeah.
I like it. Anything for better sleep. Come on.
Once again, thank you for joining us today. Please remember to rate, share, and subscribe to our podcast. And thank you for listening to Asking for a Friend.
Let us know what you thought of the episode. Our email is hello@afafpodcast.com. This show is for educational purposes only and is copyrighted. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. Thanks for listening to Asking for a Friend with TalkDoc.